Yate, she Lori Tapahonso Yinishe, Turuk Ujanishle, Ashihi Bashichin, Torich Ini Dashiche, Nakadena Dashanele, Natanines Denasha. That is how I'm known as a Navajo woman. I'm also blessed to be raised by the Eagle clan of the Acoma people. Hello, my name is Lori Tapahonso, and I'm here today to share a few pieces that I've written. I hope you enjoy them. Thank you. The first piece I'd like to share is dedicated to my family. The hospital room was spacious. It had to be in order to accommodate all of my entire family. I remember wiggling myself onto the smooth, thick concrete windowsill. I loved to look out of the third story window onto the strangely green lawn. We were in the desert town of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and green lawns were far and few between. I would watch people picnic and kids play as if they didn't mind being at a hospital. And perhaps for that short time that they frolicked, they imagined they were someplace else. My weekends and weeknights were spent inside the institutional Green Indian Health Service hospital room during the 11th and 12th years of my life. I often sat away from everyone and just kept quiet. I occupied my time with word search, books, and people watching. But more than anything, I tried to feel. I tried not to feel and to just watch. It wasn't always this way. I remember being mesmerized by how cool my Uncle Alvin and his friends were. I even had a secret crush on his best friend Jerome. We would pine over how cool he looked in his faded Levi jeans and his 80s mullet. They were so much older than us. Me and my sisters were just fascinated, though, by how cool their lives were. Even though we really didn't know what their lives were like, we thought they must have been simply fantastic. My Uncle Alvin, he got sick in his early 20s. His carefree days with friends were interrupted by his new life in and out of the confines of a hospital. I remember he would stay with us a few days at a time in and out of the he would stay with us a few days at a time in Albuquerque. And I can only assume that it was for medical reasons. Oh, he loved to make baked potatoes. They were his specialty. He would eat his potato at the table and ask me questions about school as I sat across from him working on my homework, artwork, or word search puzzles. As his life changed, so did ours. We didn't laugh as much. My mom and my aunts were always huddled as they talked in muffled voices at the hospital or at restaurants or at our house. I knew he had cancer, but I was never told what kind. And to this day, I still don't know what kind he had. I just know it took him down hard. Cancer. Now, cancer would become a word that rolled easily off my tongue as I recounted medical history to any new doctor that came into my life. I didn't think it was odd that our family was so familiar with cancer, but apparently it is. Mary Sue was the only aunt that I only knew through stories. She was diagnosed with leukemia when she was a child. My mother's older sister died in the 1950s after a long battle and difficult struggle with cancer. At the time of her death, cancer was new to the Dene and to our family. It was back when the experts thought that our people were immune to cancer, back when they sent dads, brothers, uncles, and grandpas, like mine, deep into the uranium mines of Arizona and New Mexico in the heart of Deneta, Navajo land. The men would come out of the mines covered in yellow dirt. The smart ones took rags or bandanas and covered their mouths and noses. All of them walked radiant paths right up to their doorsteps of their home, including our home, our family home. I was the mother of junior high age children when I learned that my grandmother, our matriarch, was diagnosed with cancer in the winter months of her life. Now, she had lived a long, full life, rewarded with successful children, more than 24 aspiring grandchildren and a handful of great-grands by then. She loved and she knew she was loved greatly. Regardless, it was difficult to watch that intangible scourge take the life from her. Her soft hands continued to dole out love pats and gentle, comforting grips, even as the rest of her body succumbed to that internal predator. In Navajo, we call our mother sisters Shemayejas. Shemayeja, my little mother. And they are my mothers in every sense of the word. I can call them if I'm feeling bad. I can call them when I'm in need. I can call them anytime, and I'll be greeted with, "Oh, Shiyaja Bunty." Shiyaja meaning my little one, and Bunty being that childhood nickname that I'll never be able to outgrow. Not too long ago, I longed to hear that silly nickname from my Aunt Lorraine. I'm her namesake, and I spent the early years of my life living with her and her husband, my Uncle Jim. It was at my own wedding to my husband, Jimmy, that I learned that her and my Uncle Jim were the original Lori and Jimmy. History repeats itself in the most amazing ways sometimes. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. Then I'd feared I'd have to carry on the blessing of her name alone. I remember her telling me, I knew it was coming for me, I just didn't know when. It was heart-wrenching to hear that doom in her voice from over 1,000 miles away. When she was first diagnosed, they caught it in time, but not without the sacrifice of her womanhood. My Auntie Woji, she's gruff, tough, and funny, and she doesn't even realize it. As kids, we'd always jokingly try to avoid her trailer come evening, and it wasn't easy. Her front door was at a 90-degree angle from our family home where our grandparents lived. That's where our family gathered. If one of us strayed too close to her trailer, she'd call us to her side and make us scratch her hair or her back till it bleeds. Because after all, we were of slave age. Yeah, we can laugh about that now, but as kids, steering clear was a covert operation. Those funny memories were endangered once we learned that she too had become a victim of cancer. She would be the second case of breast cancer in our family. Her life was spared, but not without her offering of self, body, and dignity. Today, her humor and liveliness is guarded by folded arms and limited gestures, almost as if protecting self. Now, in Diné life, there are no dividing lines for family. There really are no aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, or nephews. We're all simply mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, and each other's children. One of my younger sisters was in junior high when she was hit by a car. Even then, she was a tiny, petite girl with delicate features. We feared that her fragile body couldn't handle the trauma. They urgently labored to piece her back together again as we braced against the fact that she might not survive. We were told that if she did, she might not even be able to ever walk again. Well, they were wrong. She walked right out of the grips of death and into young adulthood and later into motherhood. When her youngest children, twins, were just beginning their preschool experience, she learned that she was firmly in stage 4 of cancer, a rare cancer. Her body failed her and didn't develop as it should have when she was a toddler, giving an opportunistic cancer the perfect environment to grow. We worried that this would be the end, her even more fragile body ready for the long, hard fight. And every day was a battle against a powerful unseen villain. Prayers and tears enveloped her small bedridden body. Her bedridden body as she drew back against the impending death. As she went into remission, only to be back on the battlefield a few years later. Again, she drew strength from family, friends, and loved ones, alive and departed, and she pulled firmly back into our lives for a while longer. Now, chemotherapy, it's a cruel savior in our circles. It's the kryptonite to cancer, yet it's that kink in our protective armor called immunity. My sister battled with the repercussions of her numerous cycles of chemo, her nearly 90-pound frame, braced against the simple invasion of germs, illnesses, and even the common cold. It was a bittersweet reminder of the tears, prayers, and faith that uplifted our own vanquished spirits during her most trying times. Sadly, our family stories are not unique. They're also not proof that we have a family curse. They're simply stories of Navajo people that are familiar and the same for indigenous peoples around the world. They are proof that we're not some magical people with the ability to conjure up paranormal protections from universal forces. They are proof that we are not superhuman beings that can seek help from botanical or animal entities. They are proof that we're human. These stories are proof that we're survivors. We have proven over generations that we are resilient, we are determined. We have stood together and strong against more than most people care to even imagine. We are proof that the human spirit is stronger than disease, manufactured myths, and genocide. We stand above the blame and use that strength to uplift one another. Now and in the future, we will continue to weave our stories of hurt and disease. But in each, we always look beyond to the outcome. Maybe that outcome is a new journey in a new life or a renewed journey in this one. Either way, the end is always a blessing. The end is always a blessing. This next piece is dedicated to my mom. Oh, I went to a rough elementary school in Albuquerque. Imagine that. Now, if you recall, when you were in third grade, the fourth graders seemed like teenagers. And the fifth graders, well, they seemed like adults. You had to respect their seniority. Well, there was this one near college age girl in fifth grade named Nora. She was very respected or feared. The two are synonymous in elementary school. Oh, the last day of school was a celebration my fourth grade year. Oh, summertime! I remember this day vividly. Before beginning my walk home about 3 miles uphill, I stopped to race a few kids on the monkey bars. I did a few tummy-turning spins on the tire swing, and I watched some kids gather for some sort of sports practice on the other side of the huge playground. And then, after exerting all of my energy, I wiped the sweat from my brow and began the long migration home with all of the other kids, including Nora. Now, Nora and her gang were way ahead of me. She walked ahead of her pack of friends, and she looked more like a chaperone than a peer, kind of Yeti-ish, not to offend Yeti lovers. I kicked rocks and tried to waste time so that they could get far enough ahead of me, just in case, anything. I was told by my mom over and over again, don't wander off the normal way. Don't use the shortcuts. I didn't understand why it mattered. I was going to get home, right? Spoiler alert, always listen to your mother. By this point, I had let Nora and her pack of wild hooligans get so far ahead of me that I didn't see them anymore. I thought for sure I was home free. And I also realized that I was really late. So I took the shortcut. I was the only kid walking that way, and it was kind of nice. I had the whole street to myself. I could dart back and forth if I wanted across the empty street. but I didn't. I rounded the corner of an open field that was below street level of the busy road that I had to cross in order to get home. And as I rounded the corner, I heard the sounds of kids talking and laughing. I didn't want to look, but I did. And yes, it was Nora and her mad posse. They were hiding in the bushes and trees, boozing and smoking, I can only assume. "What are you looking at?" she yelled. "Oh," I replied in silence. I turned my head and sped up my pace, but if you recall, I had used all of my energy earlier on the playground, so my speed wasn't quite up to par. Regardless, I think I only sped up in my mind because they caught up to me in a split second. Have you ever seen that movie, The Lost Boys? You remember it. The opening scene where that pack of hot vampires swoops down on a car with two teenagers in it and rips off the top and then devours them? Yeah? That's exactly what happened, except there was absolutely nothing appealing about this bloodthirsty pack of animals, and I wasn't old enough to drive a getaway car yet. It was swift and quick. I escaped with a few scrapes, a little bloody, and pretty shaken. Apparently, I must have looked intimidating because they kept saying that I needed to watch how I looked at people. But I think it was a lie. They were probably done with their pack of smokes and bored. Oh, the crossing guard came running down to help me up the path that led to the street. She held me for a little bit before asking where I lived. I told her that I could see my apartment building from where we were standing, and then I ran home to my mom. I remember telling her through sobs and tears, and she just stood there, holding me, making sure I wasn't broken, externally at least. Now, fast forward to summertime. Me and my mom were going somewhere. But first, we had to stop at the 7-Eleven on the corner to get something to drink. We pulled right up in front, and wouldn't you know, I saw her, Nora. I slid down in that seat as far as I could go. I didn't want to tell my mom, but I think she had an inkling that something wasn't quite right. I finally managed to tell her from my near fetal position on the floorboard that the woman child inside the 7-Eleven was in fact Nora. "Which one? Which one is she?" she said. I felt like saying she's a tall, furry one with fangs. But instead, I just reluctantly pointed her out with trembling hands. She was in the store with her aunt, who actually looked quite normal. Now, I kept low, I mean really low in the seat of the car while my mom marched in there to have a few words with them. She was in there for what seemed like forever. And then it happened. I heard a knock on the window. My mom and the aunt were standing behind a sobbing Nora. I was speechless. I slowly sat up and rolled my window down even slower. "I'm sorry for what I did for you. I'm sorry." I didn't know what to say. I just managed a half smile and a shrug. But what I was thinking was, what? My mom made Nora cry. Yes. Actually, what my mom did that day was showed me how fierce, passionate, and strong and gentle a mother's love can be all at once. She's always in my corner. She's always got my back. She's my source of strength. That's what I've learned from my mom. And if I can be just a smidgen of the same to my own daughters, then I've been a success as a parent. To this day, if I tell her how someone or something did me wrong, she's the first to say, "Tell me who it is and I'll show them." And I'm not kidding. But we both just chuckle at the thought of my little 4'9" mom coming to show them. Oh, I never did see Nora again. I'm sure she's grown now and has a lovely pack of children. Oh, and my mom? She let me go to Rehoboth the next year when I was in fifth grade. And I eventually graduated from there with some wonderful memories. So, Nora, thank you.